Sparkling water. Very good to see you again. I have been seriously remiss in failing to continue with the world-acclaimed series of book reviews I started some time ago, the last one being Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's The Lost World. Possibly you remember it. Anyway, this time, the book to be considered, Three Men in a Boat, written by Jerome K. Jerome, usually known simply as Jerome Jerome, born in 1859 in England, and at the age of 30, he published his first book, The Idle Thoughts of an Idle Fellow, in 1889, and 3 years later founded, along with some friends, a monthly illustrated magazine called The Idler. But his second book, published that year, in 1889, was Three Men in a Boat, the story of three friends who set out on a boating holiday on the River Thames in England. You know, that's the one that flows out through London. But before it gets there, it goes past places like Henley-on-Thames and Oxford. Anyway, Three Men in a Boat is one of the classic humorous works of fiction. I highly recommend it. So the next edition I got after the paperback that I showed you is this very nice hardcover. And this one included a CD of Hugh Laurie reading the book aloud. Very nice, there he is. Now, most people in the States know Hugh Laurie for his portrayal of Dr. Gregory House on television, doing a brilliant American accent, so they don't even know that he's British, or is English the way to say it. Anyway, there you have it. Now, next, I got a very nice Folio Society edition, as you can see, in a slip cover with it's beautifully bound, as all Folio Society editions are, and nicely illustrated. There you have the map of the Thames, the route the friends took in their boat, and very nice title page, and illustrated like that throughout. So, highly recommended edition of Three Men in a Boat. Now, back in 1879, that would be when Jerome Jerome was 20 years old, if I worked it out properly. In 1879, Blackwell's bookshop opened in Oxford. Now we move forward 110 years to 1989, and I entered Blackwell's bookshop to find that there was a new edition of Three Men in a Boat, a centennial edition, 1889, 1989, and I was on a bit of a tight budget at the time, and thought about, should I get it, should I not? I put it, carried in the luggage home, etc., and I decided not to get it, and when I got home I regretted it. And from time to time over the years I would remember it and be irritated all over again that I'd failed to get a copy of the centennial edition of Three Men in a Boat. So from time to time over the years I've looked for it and was never able to find it until just a few days ago. After 30 years of searching, I got the centennial edition, and it's different from all others in that rather than illustrations, it includes vintage photos of life along the Thames. And it is a really nice edition, so I'm really pleased to have gotten it. That's what's prompted this review of the book. So 3 Men in a Boat has a bit of a subtitle, To Say Nothing of the Dog. The story begins. There were 4 of us, George and William Samuel Harris and myself and Montmorency. Montmorency is the name of the dog. We were sitting in my room, smoking and talking about how bad we were. Bad from a medical point of view, I mean, of course. We were all feeling seedy, and we were getting quite nervous about it. Harris said he felt such extraordinary fits of giddiness come over him at times that he hardly knew what he was doing. And then George said that he had fits of giddiness too, and hardly knew what he was doing. With me, it was my liver that was out of order. I knew it was my liver that was out of order because I had just been reading a patent liver pill circular in which were detailed the various symptoms by which a man could tell when his liver was out of order. I had them all. He goes on to describe how he went over to the British Museum's reading room and looked it up there to confirm it, and then out of idle curiosity just turned the page of the book and began reading symptoms of other illnesses and finished the whole book and decided he had every one of the diseases in the book except for housemaid's knee. So he goes to the doctor gives him a prescription. Hadn't the heart to even look at it. He takes it over to the chemist, which is what they called pharmacists back in those days. And the chemist says that he doesn't keep it. I said, "You are a chemist?" He said, "I am a chemist. If I was a cooperative stores and family hotel combined, I might be able to oblige you. Being only a chemist hampers me." I read the prescription. It ran 1 pound beefsteak with 1 pint bitter beer every 6 hours, 1 10-mile walk every morning, 1 bed at 11 sharp every night. And don't stuff up your head with things you don't understand. Now, he's convinced, though. He feels better, but he's convinced that he does have the liver condition. In the present instance, going back to the liver pill circular, I had the symptoms beyond all mistake, the chief among them being quote, "a general disinclination to work of any kind," unquote. What I suffer in that way, no tongue can tell. From my earliest infancy, I've been a martyr to it. As a boy, the disease hardly ever left me for a day. They did not know then that it was my liver. Medical science was in a far less advanced state than now, and they used to put it down to laziness. "Why, you skulking little devil, you," they would say. "Get up and do something for your living, can't you?" Not knowing, of course, that I was ill. Now he goes on a few pages later to give us a description of Montmorency. So they decided that they would stay at pubs and inns and sleep outdoors when possible. And he says, Montmorency hailed this compromise with much approval. He does not revel in romantic solitude. Give him something noisy, and if a trifle low, so much the jollier. To look at Montmorency, you would imagine that he was an angel sent upon the earth, for some reason withheld from mankind in the shape of a small fox terrier. There is a sort of, oh, what a wicked world this is, and how I wish I could do something to make it better and nobler expression about Montmorency that has been known to bring the tears into the eyes of pious old ladies and gentlemen. When he first came to live at my expense, I never thought I should be able to get him to stop long. I used to sit down and look at him as he sat on the rug and looked up at me and think, oh, that dog will never live. He will be snatched up to the bright skies in a chariot. That is what will happen to him. But when I had paid for about a dozen chickens that he had killed and had dragged him growling and kicking by the scruff of his neck out of 114 street fights, and had had a dead cat brought round for my inspection by an irate female who called me a murderer, and had been summoned by the man next door but one for having a ferocious dog at large that had kept him penned up in his own tool shed, afraid to venture his nose outside the door for over 2 hours on a cold night, and had learned that the gardener, unknown to myself, had won 30 shillings by backing him to kill rats against time. Then I began to think that maybe they'd let him remain on earth for a bit longer after all. To hang about a stable and collect a gang of the most disreputable dogs to be found in the town and lead them out to march around the slums to fight other disreputable dogs is Montmorency's idea of life. And so, as I before observed, he gave to the suggestion of inns and pubs and hotels his most emphatic approbation. Now, as we get a bit further on, he begins to pack, and George and Harris decide that he's too slow and that they should finish the packing. And he says they began in a light-hearted spirit, evidently intending to show me how to do it. I made no comment. I only waited. When George is hanged, Harris will be the worst packer in the world. And I looked at the piles of plates and cups and kettles and bottles and jars and pies and stoves and cakes and tomatoes, etc., and felt that the thing would soon become exciting. It did. They started with breaking a cup. That was the first thing they did. They did that just to show you what they could do and to get you interested. Then Harris packed the strawberry jam on top of a tomato and squashed it, and they had to pick out the tomato with a teaspoon. And then it was George's turn, and he trod on the butter. I didn't say anything, but I came over and sat on the edge of the table and watched them. It irritated them more than anything I could have said. I felt that. It made them nervous and excited, and they stepped on things and put things behind them, and then couldn't find them when they wanted them. And they packed the pies at the bottom and put heavy things on top and smashed the pies in. They upset salt over everything, and as for the butter, I never saw two men do more with 1 and 2pence worth of butter in my whole life than they did. After George had got it off his slipper, they tried to put it in the kettle. It wouldn't go in, and what was in wouldn't come out. They did scrape it out at last and put it down on a chair, and Harris sat on it, and it stuck to him, and they went looking for it all over the room. "I'll take my oath I put it down on that chair," said George, staring at the empty seat. "I saw you do it myself, not a minute ago," said Harris. Then they started round the room again looking for it, and then they met again in the center and stared at one another. "Most extraordinary thing I ever heard of," said George. "So mysterious," said Harris. Then George got round at the back of Harris and saw it. "Why, here it is all the time," he exclaimed indignantly. "Where?" cried Harris, spinning round. "Stand still, can't you?" roared George, flying after him. And they got it off and packed it in the teapot. 3 Men in a Boat by Jerome. I recommend it highly to those who love a piece of humorous fiction, and also to those who are of the illiterate majority. Well, it may be a start of something good. Thanks very much.